Yeah, good morning, guys. So, the topic what we are going to study as a part of the module 5 is real-time operating system and integrated development environment for the embedded system design. So, we have already studied how an embedded system has to be designed. We have also come across what are the various issues normally an embedded system designer is going to face when he is going to design an embedded system. So right now what we need to do is, once an embedded system has been designed, you need to embed or you need to put a real-time operating system to that by creating a necessary integrated development environment. So this is what we are going to do in the module 5. So comparing the modules with respect to the other modules, this module is also going to be very similar to the module 4 what we have studied. I mean to say, even this module is lot about theory, but the technical aspects what we have in this particular module is comparatively more than what we had in the module 4. So the technical aspects are comparatively more because we need to study about real-time operating system, the various parts of the real-time operating system, or maybe the various kinds of the real-time operating system. So technical aspects are comparatively more in the module 5. So moving on to the module 5, I can say this is continued. I can say this particular topic what we have here, this is going to be the continued part of your module 4. So starting with the continued part of module 4, you would be very well aware about the super loop based task execution model. In the very final part of the module 4, there was a topic which was called as super loop based task execution model. So what the super loop task execution model does is, it's basically a software that will be executing the task in a sequential fashion, or it will be executing the task in a sequential order in which the tasks are listed within the loop. Here, every task is repeated at regular intervals and the task execution time is, or task execution is non-real. So for example, let us say that you have written a program, and in the program you are having some tasks to be performed. Let's say there are 5 tasks, task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4 and task 5. So you have created a main task. Inside the main task you have placed all these subtasks as task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4 and task 5. So in case if it is a super loop based task execution model, what happens is your task 1 will get executed initially, after that task 2 will get executed, after that task 3 will get executed, and after that task 4 will get executed, and after that task 5 will get executed. In case if your task 1 is going to take lot of time for its execution, then the time at which your task 2 gets executed will get delayed. Or in case if you are having so many tasks in your task list, then probably the time taken to complete all the tasks that is listed in the task list will be delayed. That is what happens in case of your super loop based task execution model, which you have already studied. But the certain applications demand time critical response to task events, and the delay in the response time may be catastrophic. What this sentence says is, there are some tasks which are given in real time which may be demanding that I want the response for this particular task in this particular time. Which says that the time should be deterministic. It says that the response to this particular task should be coming within this amount of time. Whereas in case of your super loop based model, the time was not critical. Your task could get executed at whatever time it was needed. Or if one of the tasks was taking more time to get executed, the next task could get delayed. Or the task which was superseding that will be getting delayed. But there are some tasks in the real time systems or in the real time embedded systems which will say that I want this task to get executed within this amount of time. That is meant by the critical response. There are systems which says that I want the task to be done within this amount of time. If the task is not going to be done within this amount of time, then it might prove dangerous or it might prove very critical. For example, some of the tasks in the flight control systems or maybe in the airbag control systems, what we have already studied in the fourth module, or maybe in case of your anti-lock brake systems of the vehicles, or in case of your nuclear monitoring devices, these tasks are very critical. So once you start the task, this task has to be completed within the given time. If the task is not going to be completed or if it is not getting completed with the given amount of time, then probably it is going to prove dangerous. For example, let me say that I want the landing gears of my flight to be coming out of the given space in the given amount of time. Suppose if it is not going to come out, then probably your flight which is getting landed will meet with an accident. Or let's say that you are applying an brake in the ABS system, and if the ABS system is not working fine, then probably your car is going to meet with an accident. Or let me say that your nuclear monitoring device, there is a fusion or fission happening in the nuclear device. Suppose if you cannot stop the process within the given time, then there might be a big explosion happening, which means that there are some tasks in the given system which has to be deterministic. Whereas in case of your super loop based model, the tasks are not deterministic, which says that it's okay, you give the response whenever it is possible. The response is not like deterministic. I am not expecting you to give the response in the 3rd second itself, or I am not expecting you to give the response in the 5th second itself. It is okay you give it in the 4th second, or it is okay you give it in the 6th second also. For example, it may be in terms of the toys what a kid will be playing, or maybe in the fan speed regulation of the fan. There are some tasks which says that it is fine, the task can be done in any time. That is what it is meant by the super loop based task execution model. For firmware means it's the software which actually will be doing the task that is listed in the super loop based task execution model. In case of your embedded system, not in case of a generalized embedded system, most of the embedded system, the time critical response for task event may be addressed by, which means that in an embedded system, or normally an embedded system will be expecting the response to be as deterministic as possible. When you say that you switch on the fan, you want the fan to rotate. When you say that you are increasing the speed of the fan, you want the fan to rotate. So how can you make the response of the system deterministic? How is it possible to do that? Or how do you actually achieve the deterministic behavior of an embedded system? So that deterministic behavior can be achieved by this particular point. First one is assigning priority to the task and execute the high priority task. That is, let me say that you have some tasks to be executed, 5 tasks, out of which the 3rd task is very critical. Task 1, Task 2, Task 4 and Task 5 can be executed at any time, or it may be non-deterministic. Whereas the 3rd task is very critical. So what you do is, you will be assigning the priority to the 3rd task. You will be saying that the 3rd task has got highest priority and execute that task first. Next is dynamically change the priorities of the task if required on the need basis. Let me say that your embedded system is running and embedded system is doing some task or list of tasks it is doing, out of which you feel that some tasks are very critical. So when you feel that those tasks are very critical, what you do is you will be changing the priorities of this task dynamically based on the requirement. The 3rd thing what you can do is introduction of the operating system based firmware execution in the embedded devices can address this needs to a greater extent. So instead of giving the priority to the task, or instead of changing the priority of the task dynamically, what you can do is you can embed an operating system in the embedded device or in the embedded system which will be taking care of the priority of the task, or which will be taking care of which task has to be deterministic and which task has to be non-deterministic in its behavior. So we have started with an introduction to the operating system. Why basically the operating system is needed in a embedded system? We have already designed an embedded system and my embedded system was already functioning very properly. Still, why do I need an operating system? Operating system is basically needed in order to take care of some of the critical tasks what happen in a embedded system. So what is this operating system? So I need not tell a lot about this operating system because you people are already studying operating systems as a subject. Let me touch the subject from the surface. I'm not going to the depth of this particular subject. So I'm going to go with the surface. I'm just going to give you the basic definitions, or I'm just going to refresh the definitions what you have studied in your other subject. So operating system basics. So operating system basically acts as a bridge between the user applications or task and the underlying system resources through a system functionalities, services and protocols. So basically your operating system acts as a bridge between the application what your user or the task what your user wants to perform and the resources what are present in the embedded system. So what you would have done, you want a particular task to be done. So in order to perform a particular task, what you would have done is you would have kept lot of hardware components in the embedded system. So this operating system basically acts as a bridge between the task what has to be performed and the way in which the task has to be performed by the hardware components what the user or what the designer would have kept in the embedded system through a set of rules or through a set of protocols or through a set of programs. So basically what are the functions of a embedded systems, or what are the primary functions of embedded system in primary functions of an operating system in the embedded system. So basically the primary functions are make the convenient or make the system convenient to use. So you have designed an embedded system. I want that embedded system to be working perfectly in the given environment. So operating system will be making sure that the embedded system will be working to its best efficiency, or the user can use the embedded system to the maximum if there is an operating system that is installed in the embedded system. Organize and manage the system resources efficiently and correctly, which means that there will be a lot of components or there will be a lot of hardware and software components what you would have placed in the embedded system so that your embedded system works very properly. So once you turn on the embedded system, I want all those particular components to be working very efficiently, right? So your operating system will be making sure that all these components will be working sure. Not only that, they will be organized and managed in a efficient and correct order. That is what is the primary function of your operating system. See, normally this is your operating system. The intermediate thing what you can see here, this can be called as an operating system. So this is your user application, some task that has to be performed, and this is your underlying hardware. So here you can see there are user applications and there are underlying hardware, and there is a bridge that is occurring between the user application and the underlying hardware. So this particular bridge that you can visualize, this can be called as operating system. So this basically makes the task what is assigned to be performed efficiently with the help of the hardware components what has been connected in the embedded system. The following figure gives an insight into the basic components of an operating system and their interfaces with the rest of the world. So in fact there will be UPIs. UPIs means interfaces. User interfaces based on the applications are based on the drivers whatever has been installed in the system. So basically this is how your operating system is going to look like. So in fact if I open up the operating system, there will be a lot of other components which are present inside the operating system. As I said you, operating system will be making the hardware work efficiently with the help of some functionalities and services. So the functionalities and the services are the things what you can see here. Fine. The kernel you can see here, kernel services, the word kernel services here. So what is this kernel actually? Kernel is nothing but it is the core of the operating system. So if you open up the embedded system, I can say that the microcontroller is the core of the embedded system. Similarly, in case of your operating system, there is something called as kernel. The kernel is the core of the operating system. It is responsible for managing the system resources and developing the communication among the hardware and other system services. So right now what has happened is your term operating system has slightly disappeared and have started replacing that term operating system with the kernel. So kernel is basically the heart of the operating system, which is responsible for managing the system resources. System resources means all the things what you can see here, system resources, and the communication, or to develop the communication among the hardware and the other system services. Kernel acts as an abstraction layer between the system resources and the user applications. Again the same thing. It just acts as a layer between the system resources and the user applications. So user applications are here and the system resources are here. So it just acts as a blind layer between the user applications and the system, or user applications and the system resources. Kernel also contains a set of system libraries and the services. You are very well aware about this. Kernel will be containing a set of system libraries and the services, which means that it contains a set of predetermined or pre-fed tasks and services, which means that whenever you install an operating system to a embedded system, not all the tasks what has to be performed has to be fed to the system, or it has to be told to the operating system. My operating system will be having some of the pre-knowledge which is already fed to that. That is what it says. Kernel contains a set of system libraries and the service. For a general purpose operating system, the kernel contains different services like memory management, process management, time management, file system management, and input output system management. I told you, it is not that you need to tell the operating system what is the work it has to do. Some of the task is already pre-fed in the operating system, or it is already pre-written in the operating system, which will be something like memory management. I want my data to be written here. I want my programs to be written here in the embedded system. So all those will be done by the operating system. I had explained this to you in the very initial classes. Once the operating system takes control over the system, then operating system will be managing the entire work. Before that, there will be some predefined programs. So once the predefined program, once you turn on the system, I need to make sure that all the hardware components are proper, all the things are proper. Once all the components are proper, then operating system will be taking over the system. Once the operating system takes control over the system, then obviously it will be doing the at least the basic task. The basic task may be something like memory management, process management, time management, file system management, input output system management. So memory management means which part of the memory has to be used and which part of the memory has to be reserved. Process management, which process has to be done first and which process has to be done next. Time management, how fast it has to be done and how slow it has to be done. File system management, there will be a lot of files which will be present in the system and they have to be managed. And input output system management, which input output systems or which input output devices that are connected to the embedded system has to be given with the services, or the interrupt that comes from the input output devices has to be processed first and which has to be processed later. So the basic application will be taken care by this operating system. That is why we normally install an operating system to the embedded system. See, what do you mean by this process management? Process management deals with managing the process and task. Process management includes setting up a memory for the process, loading the process code into memory, allocating the system resources, scheduling and managing the execution of the task, setting up and managing the PCB, inter-process communication and synchronization, process termination, deletion, etc. For example, let me say that my task is to add two numbers. Okay? Your task is to add two numbers. So you would have written a program in order to add two numbers. So as soon as you write this particular code in order to add two numbers, my operating system will be segregating the program into the data and the code. So code will be stored in a separate memory and the data will be stored in a separate memory. That is what it says, that setting up the memory for the process, loading the process code into the memory. After this memory has been set up, the code with respect to the code and the data will be loaded to that particular memory. After that, what your operating system will do is it will allocate the system resources. It will tell the adder, see, this is your task Adding two numbers is your task. So it will tell adder to take over the task. Scheduling and managing the execution of the process. It will take care whether any other process is running. If other process is running, it will make sure that that process is ended up or that process is completed, and after that it will tell the adder based on the priority. In fact, it will tell the adder you just add two numbers. Setting up and managing the PCB. PCB is nothing but the hardware components. PCB is printed circuit board, or you can also call it as process control block also. Inter-process communication and synchronization. So when the data has to go inside and when the process has to go outside. Process termination and the deletion. So that is what is process management. I said a particular process has to be done, and the operating system will make sure that how that process has to be managed very efficiently in the embedded system. The next task what it is going to do is primary memory management. So why this memory is needed? Memory is normally needed to in order to store the data, in order to store the codes, or in order to store the any of the things. So here primary memory refers to the volatile memory, RAM, where processes are loaded and the variables and shared data are stored. Simple. Primary management, memory management is a task which is done by your operating system. So operating system will be managing the primary memory, or it will be managing the volatile memory, that is RAM, where the required processes are loaded and the variables and the stored shared data are stored. That's what I said. The required codes and the data are stored in the respective memory. The memory management unit of the kernel is responsible for keeping track of which part of the memory area is currently used by which process, allocating and deallocating the memory space on the need basis. So memory management unit, there is something called as, you would have studied this, memory management unit. Memory management unit will be looking into the system and it will be telling, okay, this part of the memory is empty, this part of the memory is filled up, this part of the memory is very much critical, which part of the data has to be pushed out of the memory. So all those tasks will be done by your RAM itself. I am just explaining you why operating system is important in the embedded system. File system management. File is nothing but it's a collection of related information. A file could be a program, text files, images, work documents, audio files, audio or video files. So file system management. So whenever the data goes inside, it may be a code that goes inside as a file that has to be managed. Or let's say that you are sending an image to be processed. So that image what you are giving inside will be sent as a file. Or it may be a work documents, audios or video clips. You want the audios or video clips to be filtered. You want them to be very much clear. So all those will be going inside the system. You are feeding that as input via the input device to the system. The operating system will be collecting that data and it will be storing it in terms of a file. A file system management service of a kernel is responsible for the creation, deletion and alteration of the files. I told you the data which will go inside will be stored in terms of files. Suppose the data is not needed, you will delete it. Suppose you want to create a new data, it will be created. Suppose you want to change the data, then that will be altered. Creation, deletion and alteration of the directories. So where that data has to be stored, that will also be created by the operating system. Saving of files in the secondary storage memory. So whatever data normally goes inside and what are in terms of files will normally not be stored in the primary memory. My primary memory is normally used to store the very critical codes that will be operating your or that will be making your system work efficiently. Providing automatic allocation of the file space based on the amount of free running space available. Very important task. So let's say that a bigger file goes inside. So once a bigger file goes inside as an input, your operating system will make sure where that particular file has to be stored. Depending, it will check which part of the memory is empty. So it will store that particular data there. Providing flexible naming conversion for the files. Very much important. It is not that you just store the data. You need to retrieve the data, right? So operating system will make sure that it is going to name the files as per the hierarchy or as per the things needed in the system. That is what is providing flexible naming conversions for the file. So this is your third task what your kernel is going to do. Basically this is the third task what your operating system is going to do. Operating system means kernel is actually the heart. So kernel is going to do all this particular work. Input output system bar device management. Kernel is responsible for routing the input output requests coming from different user applications to the input output devices of the system. This is nothing but your input output devices every now and then will be sending the data inside, or it will be asking for the data outside. So your kernel is responsible for managing which device should be given with the data and which data has to be accepted inside. In a well structured OS, direct access to input output devices not allowed. Access to them is established through API, application programming interface. The kernel maintains a list of input-output devices of the system. This happens initially itself. As soon as you turn on the system, my operating system will make sure what are the input devices and what are the output devices that are connected to the system. And this particular device will be handled using a device manager. There is a program which is called as device manager in the kernel, which will be responsible for handling all the input-output related operation. So device manager will be assisting the kernel. Device manager will be assisting the kernel in telling whose data has to be taken inside based on the priority and who has to be given with the process data based on the priority. See, it's given here. The device manager is responsible for loading and unloading of device drivers. So as soon as you install a device, you have to communicate, right? Those devices has to be communicating with the operating system. So normally this device managers will be responsible for establishing the communication between the components or the devices what you are installed with the help of the device drivers, exchanging information and the system specific control signals to and from the device, which means that sending the data in and out of the device. So kernel will be having one more person or one more assistant who is called by the name device manager, who will be responsible for managing the input output devices that are connected to the system. Secondary storage management. So primary storage management or primary memory management is done. Primary memory management is something with respect to the memory that is present within the system or within the embedded system. Now secondary storage or secondary memory is the memory which is present out of the system, or a memory which you are installing when you feel that the primary memory is not sufficient in order to store the data. Deals with managing the secondary storage memory devices, if any. Not necessary, it should always be having the secondary storage connected to the system. Secondary memory is used for backup medium for programs and data, as main memory is volatile. As soon as the power is turned off, your memory is going to lose the data. In most of the system, secondary storage is kept in hard disk. Normal like your mobile phones and your laptops. The secondary storage management service of kernel deals with disk storage allocation, disk scheduling, free disk space management. You would have seen this. So whenever your memory is full, you will go and clean the trash, or you will go and clean the extra or some miscellaneous data what is stored in your memory. That is what is done by your operating system or kernel of your operating system, which is a very important task of your secondary memory management. So that is one more task. Protection systems, quite obvious, right? You will be having some of the important data that are stored in your embedded system, and you want that data not to be changed by anyone other than the administrator, or there will be some data that are present in the embedded system which can be changed by one or two users. So normally how do you do that? Is you do that by providing a protection system. Modern operating systems are designed in such a way to support multiple users with different levels of access permissions. Access is for what? For changing the data that is stored in the memory, or changing the data that is stored in the memory of the embedded system. The protection deals with implementing the security policies to restrict the access of system resources and particular user by different application or process and different user. So here protection system will be deciding who will have the access to which data. How many users are going to have the access to what kind of data? Whether it is going to have the access to the primary memory, whether it is going to have the access to the secondary memory, how many people can change it, how many people can just view it, how many people can edit it. That is all done by the protection system. Remember, all these tasks are done by your operating system. So think of the advantage. If the operating system was not there, then you probably should have written the code in order to do all this particular task. Right now you have just installed an operating system and the operating system is doing all this particular work. Operating system is taking care of managing the memory, managing the primary, secondary memory, input out devices. It is capable of giving the protection to the protection to the data that is stored in the memory. All these things are done by the operating system. Not only that, interrupt handler. I told you what is an interrupt. Interrupt is nothing but a response which is given by the input system or a response which is expected from the output system. So normally when an input system has got a data to be given to the system, input will be sending a signal inside saying that it will be sending an interrupt saying that I have some data. So your operating system will be handling even the interrupts also. Operating system will act as an interrupt handler also. It will decide which input output device data has to come inside, which input output data has to be masked, or which interrupt has to be masked and which interrupt has to be unmasked, or which interrupts has to be serviced immediately and which interrupt has to be made to wait. So basically that is also one of the important tasks that is done by your operating system. Suppose let me say that there is no operating system, there are multiple input devices which are giving the input. So your system will be in a confusion which data has to be accepted and which data has to be given away. So all those particular work will be done by your kernel, which is a very important part of your operating system. So kernel provides interrupt handling mechanism for all external, internal interrupt generated by the system. All these topics you are very well aware of and you have already studied in the basics of the operating system. I am just trying to refurbish it. I'm just trying to refresh it. That's it. I'm not going in detail with respect to any of the things because you already studied this in the very first module of my subject itself and you are also studying this in the last module of my subject, as well as you would have studied this in detail in one of the subjects of your same semester. Yeah, normally when I speak about a kernel or whenever I speak about a core of an operating system, the kernel space or the space in which your kernel is placed or this particular space, yeah, this particular space what you can see here, this particular space what you can see here is broadly categorized or it is divided into two spaces. The first space is called as kernel space, the second space is called as user space. So operating system, the space of the operating system is divided into two different spaces. One is called as kernel space and the other is user space. The program code corresponding to kernel application services are kept in the contiguous area of primary memory and is protected from the unauthorized access by the user programs or applications. Very important. I cannot let a user play with the code of a operating system. Suppose if that happens, then normally I can say that operating system has crashed. You can say your operating system is crashed, isn't it? So what has to be done is you need to keep all those contagious data or you need to keep all those critical data in a very much protected area of the memory where normal user or unauthorized applications will have no access at all. The memory space at which the kernel code is located is known as kernel space. All user applications are loaded to a specific user area of primary memory and this area is referred as user space. You're getting it very well aware. So in whichever area I'm going to place my operating system, I'll be calling that by the name kernel space. And whichever area of the memory you are going to load your applications or the user applications, I'll be calling it as user space. The partitioning of the memory into kernel and user space is purely operating system dependent. So it is not that all the operating systems will be having all these two spaces, kernel space and user space. It is purely operating system dependent. Some operating systems may have it and some operating system may not have it. Most of the operating systems keeps the kernel application code in the main memory and it is not swapped out into the secondary memory because I want those particular codes to be as protected as possible. Always you need to install your operating system again. Suppose if I give the access to the user to the code of the operating system, then normally he will change it. If he changes it, then obviously your operating system is corrupted. You need to install the operating system again. So normally I will try to keep that kernel code in a very much protected area where there is no unauthorized access. That is what is kernel space and user space. Speaking with respect to the types of kernels, you have two types of kernels. One is called as monolithic kernel, other one is called as microkernel. Kernel forms the heart of the operating system. Different approaches are adopted for building the operating system kernel. Based on the way in which my kernel is designed, kernels are classified into monolithic and micro. What is this monolithic kernel? So you can see here. This diagram explains your monolithic kernel. So what happens here is, in this monolithic kernel architecture, all the kernel services, all the things whatever I told till now, all the applications or all the services are run in the kernel space. All kernel modules run within the same memory space under the single kernel thread. So I told you a lot of applications, right? What are the various applications of the kernel? I said memory management, device management, interrupt handling, all those works. So whatever work your kernel is going to do, all those works are done in a single kernel space. But the drawback here with respect to this monolithic kernel is, if there is any error or failure in any of the kernel modules, let me say that the protection module is not working fine. Protection module is not working fine. If the protection module is not working fine, and if all the other modules are working fine, your entire kernel is going to crash. That is the problem with the monolithic kernel. Examples are Linux, Solaris, MS-DOS kernels. Any one module is not working in monolithic kernel, you have to replace your operating system. As a solution to this particular kernel, you have an alternate kernel which is called as microkernel. The microkernel design incorporates only essential set of operating system services into the kernel. The rest of the operating system services are implemented in a program known as servers. Only the critical things what has to be done, or only the important modules which are the part of the operating system are kept in the kernel space. The remaining applications, the remaining unwanted things all are kept in the program, or it is all implemented in a program known as servers, which runs in the user space. So I said to you there are two spaces. The memory management, timer management, interrupt handlers are the essential service which forms a part of the kernel. The remaining things, secondary memory management, or maybe what else tasks you had? You had input output device management, you had file system management. So all those particular tasks are kept in a user space, which means that suppose if they gets corrupted, then normally your kernel will be working fine. You need not worry about the things. The benefits of the microkernel based designs are robustness. If the problem is encountered in any of the services which runs as a server, it can be reconfigured and restarted without the restarting the entire operating system. Here the chances of the corruption of kernel services are ideally zero. Second is configurability. Any services which runs as server applications can be changed without the need to restart the whole system. This makes the system dynamically configurable. So whichever are important are kept in the kernel space, whichever are not that critical are kept in the user space. So whenever something happens in the kernel space, you can just change the kernels there. You need not restart the entire system. Whenever something gets spoiled in the user space, you need not actually install the operating system. You can just rewrite the things, or you can just install the parts of the kernels as such. Whereas in case of your monolithic kernel, entire operating system has to be changed, because of which it had no robustness and it had no configurability. Known things. Probably you people would be able to explain these things in a better way in which I can explain to you. Types of operating system. So depending on the types of the kernels and the kernel services, purpose and the types of the computing system, operating systems are classified into various different kinds. The very first one is called as general purpose operating system. General purpose operating system is the operating system what you normally have in your laptops or in your mobile phones. For example, Windows 8, XP, MS-DOS, all these are general purpose, where the response time is not critical, or the response is not critical, or the response time is not deterministic, or the behavior of the system is not non-deterministic. You can tell fine, you are pressing a key here and your key can, or the system can give the response after some 2 seconds or 3 seconds. You are adding a multiple numbers here and your system can give you response after maybe around a fraction of a second. You do not mind, where normally the systems are non-critical, or the response of the systems are not non-critical. Those particular systems and the operating systems what gets installed in those particular systems are called as general purpose operating systems, which you are very well aware about. The operating systems which are deployed in general computing system. General computing systems means the system which will be normally doing mathematical and logical operations are referred as GPUs. The GPUs are quite often non-deterministic in behavior, which means that you cannot say when are you going to get the behavior of the system. Examples are given here. So normally when I speak about embedded system, please be very much specific here. My embedded systems are not general purpose. My embedded systems are specific purpose. You have designed your embedded system for a specific purpose. So you cannot install a general or you cannot install a general purpose operating system into your embedded system. You need to install a specific purpose operating system itself. Your operating system should be kept in a memory of a embedded system in order to perform a specific purpose itself. You cannot say that, sir, it is going to do the purpose generally. No, it cannot happen. Out of the specific purpose, one what we are going to discuss in today's session or in today's video session is real-time operating system, which you are very well aware about. You call it as RTOS. Real-time implies deterministic in timing behavior. You can be very much sure about the response of the system. You can say this is the time duration or this is the time when my system is going to give me the output. RTOS services consumes only known and expected amount of time regardless of number of services. You give any number of tasks, it doesn't mind. For example, you give any number of tasks, you have 5 tasks to be performed. Then let me say that first task is done, second task is done, and what you do is you add 3 more tasks. So if you add 3 more tasks, it doesn't mean that your third task is going to get delayed. Your third task is going to give you the output in the expected time itself. RTOS implements policies and rules concerning time critical allocation of system resources. So normally when I say that the system is going to give you the output, it means that there should be a proper interfacing happening between the user application and the system or underlying system resources, which means that RTOS will be having a set of policies or set of rules or set of protocols which make sure that the system resources will be allocated in the given amount of time. RTOS decides which applications should run in which order and how much time is needed to be allocated for each application. Very much accurate. When you are very much sure that when the output has to be coming or at what time the output has to be generated, your RTOS should be deciding when the system has to be allocated and when the system has to be giving you the output. The kernel what is installed in your real-time operating system is called by the name real-time kernel. The real-time kernel is highly specialized and it contains only minimal set of services required for running user applications and tasks. All theory parts here, so I need not explain this at all. For example, if you want what is this particular sentence here, you understand. The kernel which is present or which is the core of the real-time operating system, it will be having a minimal set of services required for running the applications of the task, and the applications of the task what has to be performed are very much specific. It is not general. The basic tasks that are performed in your real-time kernels are, which we are going to check out in the next video, is task bar process management. Quite obvious, right? Your process or task has to be managed by the kernel. Scheduling of the task and process, synchronization of the task and process, error and exception handling. Suppose if there is an error or exception, then that has to be handled. Memory management, which is a part of your part of a job of your kernel. Interrupt handling, time management. So all these particular tasks will be performed by your real-time kernel. Even though if it is not real-time kernel, it will be performed by your general kernels also. So in the next video session, we are going to check out what is so much specific regarding the real-time kernels, or how specially it is going to handle all this particular task. So we will wind up this particular video session here. Thank you.